President Cyril Ramaphosa is not going to attend the special NEC meeting in Nasrec. The NEC is meeting to discuss the outcomes of the independent panel of experts led by retired Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo. The three-member panel found that the president may have violated his oath of office in the 2020 robbery at his Phala Phala farm. As you see there, those are visuals coming from Nasrec with the NEC members still trickling in. But now let's discuss this now. We're now joined in studio by Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News' politics editor. Mzwandile, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Well, a busy day, but now, we've got this breaking news strap that is currently running. President Cyril Ramaphosa not attending the NEC meeting. Talk to us about what this means, particularly if you look at what is on the agenda of today's meeting, essentially discussing the Section 89 report.
Thank you very much, Unati. I mean, if ever anyone doubted the seriousness of this meeting and the seriousness of the state of affairs right now in the country, this should then bring that message home. Yes, we've been here before. You'd remember when the fates of the former presidents, President Zuma and President Mbeki respectively, were decided, so they were not at the meeting. But the circumstances were a bit different because they were no longer the presidents of the ANC at the time. So the difference here is that he is still the president of the ANC, at least for the next 2 weeks, because December 16, so he has to step aside because, well, by stepping aside, I mean the new leadership will have to be elected. So, but the importance really of this, Unati, is that it tells you that the country is grappling with something very serious. And then it goes beyond the country. This is not only the president of the ANC, this is the head of state. Whatever happens, so affects everyone. So you saw a bit of movement on the rand. There could be some panic elsewhere. In fact, from the investors, the people who as money, so to speak, because if then someone who is being discussed, yes, it's rational that he be not there, but I think it could raise that fear, perhaps from certain quarters, to say, oh, well, probably they may seal his fate like they did last time. So that is not far-fetched from the point of view of people who may not be there.
And I'm glad you touched on just the effects on what this is having on the economy. We also know that, of course, this particular story, particularly following the report of Section 89, is also trending internationally. I mean, there are international headlines around this particular saga and the uncertainty of Ramaphosa's future. I mean, Samkele Maseko interviewing Gwede Mantashe, and Gwede Mantashe echoing your words, essentially saying, should the president decide to resign, of course, we know that he has confided with some of his close confidants that was on the table or on the cards. Should he resign, Gwede Mantashe saying, it would essentially spell a very chaotic environment for the country.
You know, the difference here, perhaps if you look at the previous presidents that were recalled, is that, I mean, when President Mbeki was recalled, for example, everyone knew who was next in terms of the next leader. So as much as President Mutlante came in as interim, but we knew that he was the interim because President Zuma, who had been elected ANC president, was the next in line. And then when President Zuma was recalled, we knew who was going to take over. That was President Ramaphosa. And then in this instance, you have the president who decides to resign today. Who will take over? Is it the deputy president? But the deputy president is up for re-election in 2 weeks himself. So what that tells you is that there is no one that even South Africans and the international community is aware of, is ready to step in. It is bound to cause panic. So that is what Gwedemandashe essentially was saying. And I think those who persuaded the president from resigning so also had that in mind to say, I mean, yes, we know there are leaders who are vying for the position, but at the moment, there's no clear cut. There's no clear cut. With the previous ones, you at least knew who you were getting, so you knew who to deal with.
And in fact, we will play some of the interview with our viewers, but one of the things that he did say, or was asked rather, is does he not have trust in the deputy president taking over? And of course he was saying we need to remember that this process needs to take its course. We need to allow the process to take its course before we, make assumptions that he will resign. In fact, I mean, if you look at just what the Section 89 panel ruled, saying essentially that there were grounds to impeach President Cyril Ramaphosa over Phala Phala Farmgate. I just want to remind our viewers, those are live visuals coming from Nasrec NEC members, of course, attending this special meeting. And Mzwai, of course, we know that this is supposed to be a one-day meeting, but a lot still needs to be discussed.
Well, a lot in the form of, a lot, but actually one item. It's just that that item is intense. So its intensity will then drill out so many aspects of it. In fact, before I even go to perhaps elaborate on that, I just want, before I forget, on whether he doesn't have the faith or the confidence on the deputy president. Remember, they are all up for re-election in 2 weeks. And the deputy president, who is serving as the deputy president of the country, did not even meet the threshold. Yes, he can still rise from the floor, but he did not meet the threshold. So that does tell you that so the international community will be very worried. So, yeah.
I mean, we're looking at those scenes coming from Nasrec. Of course, all the NEC members are expected to be inside. It should have started by now. It's supposed to start at 2 p.m. It's now 3:08. What does that tell us? I mean, does this essentially say that this meeting probably will not take place? Already it seems that there is some form of, disagreement. But what can you tell us? What is the likelihood that this meeting will actually indeed take place?
No, it will certainly go ahead. And can you imagine people entrusted with the responsibility of running the organization 2 weeks before the conference absconding from their responsibilities? I mean, that will be suicidal for them. I mean, why would the conference then elect people who are not able to sit and discuss matters of national importance? It certainly will take place. So what we are not sure about is what exactly will be agreed upon. So who will prevail, and then what is the viewpoint that will win the order of the day. But the meeting will certainly take place, unless really there are technicalities that we may not be privy to.
I mean, one of the things that the Section 89 report found is that the evidence given by President Cyril Ramaphosa was hearsay. And of course, the politics team has been running several interviews with just some of the contenders of the national conference, the 55th national conference, and they too have been lamenting the fact that President Cyril Ramaphosa has not brought the NEC into their own confidence and telling them what really transpired as it relates to the Phala Phala saga. So the big question then is, without him being in this room, with this report saying that most of the evidence that he's led was hearsay, what will they essentially want to rule during this today's meeting, in fact?
Right now, they would also formulate the response. Remember, on Tuesday, it's the debate of this report. And they must be able to give marching orders to the caucus in Parliament so that they are able to respond in the manner in which it will be aligned with the party. So if this report then is debated, so then you at least have got to have an understanding where the party stands on this matter. So I think the meeting, the NEC will be able to meet. Of course, it will be heated. Of course, there are those who have made their voice known that actually following this report, he must step aside. But there are those who are saying it's not necessary. Because remember, this report, this is not a court.
Of course, a lot being said, those interviews that Samkele has just brought to us, it actually speaks to some of the things that have been said by disgruntled NEC members in the past, talking about the fractions within the NEC, talking about the divisions with that are now playing themselves out in a spectacular fashion. Talk to us firstly about what Paul Mashatile said earlier when he was briefing the media.
Well, he basically was saying they were just reminded by the NEC members that they needed to follow the process. Currently, he's the acting SGO, Secretary General, of the ANC. So, in order to convene those meetings, there's a particular way that you do it. So the NEC basically said, okay, we are here. What have we come to do? Did you follow the processes? And then it didn't happen. But for me, the thing that is really coming out very sharply there, the officials, two officials, the chairperson and the Treasurer General, contradicting each other in front of the NEC. What more divisions can you really expect if the most senior members of the party, they're contradicting themselves on a simple matter of why is the president not here? And then you have someone like Thandi Mahambeshala, the member of the NEC and the member of parliament, who has been very honest to say, we're actually weak. And perhaps that is what the society has been saying. To say perhaps some of the challenges we are facing, it's because those that have been entrusted with the responsibility of governing us are not at their strongest. She is the member of parliament. On Tuesday, she is like you and I. She's saying, I have to deliberate on this matter and take a decision. My party has not told me what to do. Remember, we are a party system. So this has just laid the divisions bare. But of course, what makes it even more pronounced in terms of the divisions is the conference that is happening in 2 weeks. If the NEC can't meet, how are you going to handle the 5,000 people that will be gathered there? So will this conference even go ahead? So it's really, 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 really problematic. I see. Yes, I'm not saying the conference is not going to go ahead, but it does call into question some of the issues. I mean, the chairperson and the TG contradicting each other, sitting next to each other, just like this. Remember, these are the people who can call the president to say, President, are you coming? Why? So they could have checked that, so they can't. I
want us to just unpack what the consequences of that could be should this conference not go ahead. I mean, you're not far off, given the timelines that, the Treasurer General gave to the media, saying that, firstly, it has to follow some form of order where the officials need to sit with this report. Then it's the NWC. Then again, of course, we'll see a similar meeting. Talking about the 6th of December then being the cutoff date where this issue will then be tabled. That's 10 days before the national conference. So it isn't far-fetched that you are saying that this conference could possibly be pushed back, but what are the consequences?
But even before we get to the conference, I think this perhaps adds a new dimension to the president's state of affairs, so to speak. We know that he was ready to address the nation yesterday and possibly say, thank you very much. But somehow he was persuaded by a number of people, internal and outside. So if his party doesn't seem to agree on what he has to do, and then what does that say to him? Does he still stick it out? If you do, are you still assured of the support in the next 10 days that you are speaking about? Even before that. So how are you going to give direction to the process that is happening on Tuesday? Then it's possible, because Thandi Mahambeshala is basically saying, so we don't know. So which means people can vote, I think, with their conscience. If that happens, where is the party line there? So clearly, this development for me, if, let's say, they are not able to reconvene on Sunday and conclude this meeting, puts even more pressure on the president. Perhaps he may rethink his decision as to where he goes next. Because This is his party. This is the NEC. They can't meet.
As we wrap this conversation, it's interesting what you say about the president's state of mind. You know, what is he thinking? We obviously know that, you know, from the conversations that he had with his close comrades, that he actually was considering to resign. We then heard that the meeting might be happening tonight, then possibly by Sunday. But with these developments, one wonders where that will go. But I want to talk about that, you know, that state of mind. I mean, essentially, the Section 89 report basically putting into question Ramaphosa's integrity. What does this do now for his credibility? And of course, South Africans sitting, watching what is happening within the ANC is concerning, especially from somebody that everybody is looking up to as somebody who champions, you know, corruption, somebody who wants to push renewal within the party.
Well, I think that's probably the reason why it's reported that he wanted to resign, because he is very aware that this is not doing any good to his integrity. But of course, as the head of state, it's not so much about you alone. So you represent much bigger than yourself. So you also have to take into account what other interests, be it the interests of the country, be it the continental interests, even the global interests, because at the end of the day, you need the stability for the country. So if your resignation, I'm just making it out there as an example, if your resignation means the country will suffer, so I'm sure you'll consider that. But what it basically says is that as much as he may have reconsidered his decision, his party doesn't seem to be able to show direction. So you are now between the rock and the hard place. So what do? To pull ahead to the conference? I think Sunday, because remember they have to meet before the 6th. The next NEC meeting is very crucial. And also the point that we haven't touched on, it does appear that the NEC members there wanted him to be there because they want to ask direct questions. So, and we already know some of them, very senior, have said, Mr. President, you have to go. Of course, there are those who are saying he doesn't have to. So that meeting, the question is, will he be there? How will the tensions be there when he is there? It is going to be very crucial. They only have about 2 days. I think the officials will have to meet perhaps today and tomorrow, the NWC, so that Sunday they are able to meet. On Monday, they have to go back to Parliament. They have to, many of them, they have to fly back to Cape Town because on the 6th, they have to discuss this report.
I mean, again, as you're speaking, it brings to mind, you know, what Gwede Mantashe was saying in some of the interviews that he held, saying or portraying the NEC as a united front, saying, even though we go in with our disagreements, the NEC will never come out of it fragmented. But if you listen to some of those members,
they've just come out fragmented.
They have no confidence in those two leaders that are basically in disagreement. And one of the concerning things that came out was they were expecting Ramaphosa to be there, and he was a no-show.
Also, there are also various groupings or camps playing out there, because you can see that they actually even have an issue. I mean, they even quoted that interview that we have just had with Gwede Mantashe. You can see that those opposed feel you guys are mobilizing through other platforms like the media. So we're not going to allow that. So as you are mobilizing, why are you not following the processes? So you can see that the camps are just out there.
Yeah, talking about the camps, why should the president resign? Going into the national conference, he's opening up a lot of doors for other possible candidates that could come in. Let's look at Dr. Zweli Mkhize and what that means for him if the president does indeed decide within these next couple of days, because really one doesn't know where he stands at the moment.
Well, it's not a foregone conclusion that if the president resigns, if he so decides, that Zweli Mkhize will be automatically elected. Remember, they still can raise someone from the floor. And the president had 2,000 nominations, and Dr. Mkhize had just under 1,000 nominations. So it's possible that if, let's say, he decides to step aside, and they can raise the candidate from the floor. And that candidate, who we don't know who it is, could become the president. That takes us back to the point I was saying to you, to say the reason why he's consulting with a number of stakeholders, because they don't know who is next in line. So with Zuma, with Mbeki, at least you knew who was next in line. So who are you going to deal with now? So those people, those stakeholders would want certainty.
Another thing that is concerning is the utterances that were made by Paul Mashatile in that briefing with the media, saying essentially that the officials have not yet met with Ramaphosa to discuss the decision that was taken on Wednesday. What does that tell us?
It tells us of a party disunited, of a party not trusting of each other, of a party actually not sure what it wants to do 2 weeks before the conference.
Zondile, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for unpacking all of that for us. I really do appreciate it. Of course, discussing all things ANC, of course, that meeting that was supposed to have essentially lasted the better part of today has now been adjourned. Those are the words that officials are using. Some words that were thrown out there did the meeting actually collapse? As you've heard, Samkele Maseko speaking to various NEC members who attended the meetings, not a happy camp at this stage, I'm afraid. And of course, the no-show by President Ramaphosa, again, you know, showing signs of just what a divided party the ANC currently finds itself in.